I said we were going to
George
look
Mack,
at
what is the problem?
the video about George Mack. And this one is the James Smith Show, Problem with Agency, George Mack, 4K. I'm assuming that's not a thing to discuss. It's just, what the video is supposed to be.
George Mack, what is the problem with low agency?
It's a great question. So there's a funny
Is he standing? It looks like he's standing to me. I'm going to guess not, but still.
way to answer that question. And then there's a unfunny way to answer that question. So, I mean, the funny way to answer it is just to kind of flip the question around, which is, what is the problem with low agency? And low agency / high agency directly relates to two things. One, an individual's ability to identify what problem they want to solve, which I kind of call like a live mode. And then two, how they actually go about solving that problem, which is kind of solving like an alive problem, something that's living and breathing. So your question kind of directly links to the answer, which is quite a funny thing. But the more unfunny one is the regrets of the dying. I think it's Bronnie Ware, the palliative care lady who spent time with hundreds of people that were kind of passing away at the final stages of life, whether that's older people or terminally ill. And if you look at the 5 regrets of the dying, loosely off the top of my head, it's, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had the courage to live a life truer to myself. I wish I didn't work as hard. I wish I stayed in touch with my friends. What's the other one? I've forgotten the other one, actually. There's 5 of them. There's one more. But all 4 of them pretty much relate to something around low agency.
So it revolves around kind of doing things. And then we could almost allude to the point that low agency would not be doing things. Now, I want to bring us back to when I think it was your first episode with Chris, where you brought the cards. Was that the first time or the first high production episode? No hard feelings. That I've been in business with Chris for 2 years, never had a high production episode. Right? We're not going to bring that up here. But you came so well prepared, and even when you had these visual cards to help people understand, I stopped the episode and I had to message you.
I might have to look at some of those sometime.
Directly and say, mate, this is incredible. The preparation that you had for that and the example you used is now how I tell people about this. So can you just explain to people the kind of metaphor that you use to help people understand who around them would potentially be high agency and who would be low agency?
Yeah, the question I ask is the high agency.
Well, I'm trying to think like what would cause people to be low agency, because I think a lot of it would maybe have to do, in my mind, with people who go through really traumatic stuff in life where they're still alive, but it's not because they did something. I think you could probably talk to psychologists and they'd probably tell you something like this. If a person is in a scenario, a really terrible scenario, all else being equal, they're in that scenario, they get themselves out of it versus someone else saves them. Like, the difference there, I think, would be pretty profound in the after existence in that scenario, where they figured something out versus someone figured out something for them to pull them out of. Like, I feel like that would have something to do with it. Also, I feel like I feel like people just don't try stuff enough these days. Like, I tend to think creativity is like, it almost never involves doing things you know will work. It involves doing things you think might work and doing them until one of them actually does, right? It's a lot of calculated trying more so than any, like, whatever. And I tend to think that intellect, largely, without that risk-taking faculty, without that leap of faith, intellect is largely a stagnant force. You just have to do things. Like, yeah, I don't know. I think people tend to over-intellectualize stuff too much sometimes, and they want to know before they act. And it's just like, at that point it wouldn't be called creativity. If you knew it would work, it would no longer. It's like it would no longer. Like, there has to be that leap of faith, right? A little bit.
Question, which is, you find yourself in a third world jail cell and you can only call one person that you know. Who do you call? And what's strange about that question is everybody seems to have a person in mind when they begin to think about it. And that is the highest agency person that you know. And what's strange is, and why I think that question is particularly pertinent with a lot of people.
That was sure if they were like, oh, you have like 1 day left to live or something. No, you're trying to call someone to figure out how to get you out of the situation, I assume.
Is it hits at something they've not been able to necessarily describe before? That person might not be the highest IQ or book smart that they know. They might not be have the best bench press that they know, but it's a different trait, a je ne sais quoi, which that question helps encapsulate.
So I think that a lot of people, when they try and hire staff, because I've been through my own issues with hiring, and you sometimes think, okay, I want someone well educated. Then you think, actually, no, I don't really care. Then you go, I want someone that, will understand the job in and out. And then after you've had some good hires.
I'm just saying it looks like a lot of the stuff in his background is some sort of supplement type stuff. I'm assuming he's some sort of fitness dude, just from how he looks. Wife beater. No. Why do they call it a wife beater? That's something we should look up sometime.
Bad hires, and once you start to understand what agency is, you realize you actually just want a high agency individual, someone who is always.
Well, technically, I don't know if this would actually be a wife beater. I think it's. Is it a certain type of tank top or just a tank top?
It's going to be proactive, and there's almost an issue with not understanding that agency or understanding that kind of traits that people have that I couldn't believe I'd been 35 years without being able to put my finger on it. So when we look at the world of professionalism, entrepreneurialism, success, how much of a factor do you think agency plays within someone's ability to get ahead of other people?
Pretty significant. I think there's a few things to unpack there. So the first thing that you mentioned there around you didn't have a word for it for like 35 years. So the other day I was talking to a friend and I was describing that concept. So ironically, I didn't have a word for not having a word for something. And the value of when you have a word for something, how valuable that is. This whole fucking meta game that I was playing. And he's mentioned this idea from Scott Alexander, which he calls idea handles. So one thing Chris does very well about creating idea handles that you can then pick up. So like high agency is one of those things that me and you kind of knew. It's the je ne sais quoi.
Interesting. Technically, I think je ne sais quoi would actually probably be the word for something you don't know.
Wow, you kind of like could describe it in multiple paragraphs, but having it into 2 words, like a compressed meme, is super useful. Related to their careers, I think.
I actually thought of one the other day. I feel very I shouldn't feel very clever for it. Probably someone else has come up with it. It might already be a word, but the notion of like a predicate definition, where someone says a thing, but the meaning of that thing will be determinate by whether or not people like them. Their description of the meaning of that thing, what they mean by it, is determined by what other people think about what they said. If people like it, then they might have one meaning. And like I said what I meant what I said. Like I just say things the way they are, versus if people really don't like it, then they might kind of backtrack and double speak, kind of dance around waffle or whatever to say, oh no, I actually meant this other thing. Right? It's kind of I thought it was an interesting innovation. I feel very innovative.
It significantly helps. And there's different forms of agency that we can kind of describe, but particularly related to, there was this meme the other day of like different levels of people that you work with, and kind of level 1, imagine like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like level 1 is, hey, James, I just don't know what to do until you tell me to do something. And even then I won't do it. And then kind of like level 2 is like follows instructions. And then all the way up at like the final tier is, hey, James, there was this problem that I've already identified and I've solved it. I'm just keeping you in the loop on what I've done. Like that's the kind of highest tier. And in terms of helping,
I think it has to do with that notion of creativity, which most people are too afraid to be creative, which is kind of an interesting term, right? So most people would say you should be worried about making mistakes. But shouldn't you also be worried about missing out on something that's good? Shouldn't you also be worried about that? Because like most people would say missing out on something that's good is also bad. So not committing to a thing, not being willing to try a thing is also quote unquote dangerous. That's not what we would think of as being dangerous, but it is technically dangerous. You're in danger of missing out on something. I think that is part of it. But again, I think creativity comes back to a lot of creative trying. People think of it as this magical thing that once they get the right level of knowledge, once they get the right level of maturity, then they'll be able to be creative. Like I don't think it really works that way. I think you're either just creative and you're willing to do things and try things and break a few eggs and whatever, or you're not. Like you won't get to a point where now you can be creative. You just have to try shit.
Their career. I think it's one of the most significant traits that exists.
Now, can we train people to become more or higher agency, or is it something that's kind of deep rooted into someone's persona and psychology?
So the low agency answer is no. And the high agency answer is yes. So it's kind
Trying to figure that one out. I think
of a little bit of a paradox within that. The low agency answer would just say people are determined by their genetics or their environment, whereas the high agency answer is that you could turn agency in on itself, and then you could actually get higher and higher agency. I think, like most things in life, both answers have a little bit of truth to them, but I lean more towards the latter, that it's definitely something that an individual can improve upon.
Would there be some motivation?
Is that my thing or his thing? I'm hoping it's his thing.
Motivational mechanisms that you would tie in towards this?
This is
Because if
fine.
I was to look at my own personal journey, I've definitely over the years become higher agency. I can't put my finger on why. I can't put my finger on potentially the sole cause or purpose of it.
No,
But
I think that has a lot to do with it. Like, as you get older, you go through a lot more stuff. I think you just learn to, I don't know, maybe just hopefully you learn how to try things more, be yourself more. I'd like to think so, anyways. Maybe you'd learn how to not be so afraid or self-conscious or whatever the crap. But like, it's one of those things where I don't know if there's really a substitute for experience. I don't know if you could literally just, okay, I'm going to send my kid to training camp and he's going to come out very high agency. I don't know if it's something you can intellectualize a lot, or maybe to some extent.
to me,
Certainly they train soldiers to do certain things, so there's probably some element at least.
it must be drawn to some kind of motivation within that person's life, whether it is trying to overcome some kind of emotional trauma as a kid and not being loved and accepted and becoming some incredible social media influencer, which I think maybe a lot of people in the public eye could be in denial about. Or it could be a financial thing where you might come from nothing and want to be able to provide for your family. When it comes to looking into the reasons as to why some people would be motivated to do this, because it sounds really bad. I have so much respect for high agency individuals, but then at the same time, I can almost see it as like an acute mental illness. So why is it that we're like this?
It's a question, and I think I mean the first answer is, even when we discuss like low agency individuals, high agency individuals, I don't almost like that term in a way, even though maybe I'm help propagated the term, is that you have some high agency, quote unquote high agency, and some quote unquote low agency people that in certain areas of their life they're really low agency, and then certain areas of their life they're really high agency. So for example,
That's true. Like, I guess I hadn't really thought of it that way. Like, it wouldn't be necessarily something that's across the board. Just that's the thing too. I think people can be extremely courageous in certain areas, but very cowardly or unsure of themselves in other areas. Like, confidence isn't this type of. I would like to think like a person who is courageous, a person who is of that sort. Maybe there's a distinction to be drawn between fearless and courageous, but a person who is courageous, I think, would, although they are inexperienced in a certain area, they would have the ability to push forward even if they are afraid, and to learn how to be experienced, or learn how to not be afraid of whatever the crap. Like, they might not have it to start with, they might be afraid of certain things, but they have the ability to get whatever they need to get, or to become whatever they need to become, if that makes sense.
I'm sure in your years of personal training, you've met some like incredible CEOs that are extremely resourceful, proactive at solving problems. But then as soon as it gets to their weight, they have such emotional bottlenecks or ways they get in their own way. So that's my first problem with that term. And then the second thing, just to kind of flesh the needle a little bit, to go back to what I said at the start, I don't just want agency necessary to refer to doing things. Like
Hey, look down. Who's reading something?
There's a part of it which is you also have to understand
No, I don't know. It might be something else.
why you're doing things. And I always use the example of, let's say, I call it low agency James Bond. So like, imagine, like, I think a lot of people, when they think of high agency, they think of James Bond as like the pinnacle. Hopefully Amazon don't destroy him and he's like this crazy, like woke individual that is like really, really careful in the workplace. But people,
I feel like that. I feel like that might be the way it's going. They were saying for what it's worth, I don't really have a dog in this fight. I never really got into the whole James Bond thing. I feel like I would have liked probably the older ones better, actually, like with Sean Connery or something like that. But I watched a little bit of one of Sean Connery's ones. But what was I thinking? No, they had said they were going in a new direction with the character, which I feel I feel like Hollywood has very much earned people's mistrust. So when they say new direction, I can't really conceptualize something good coming out of that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should be conceptualizing some brilliant new whatever. But all I can think is how they're going to ruin it. They're gonna ruin it. They're gonna skin walk someone else's legacy. Okay, this is something. The notion, like I hate the fact that they're taking whatever. I'll try to explain it this way. Morgan Freeman, right? He's done a thing recently where he's tried to get the rights kind of claimed to his voice so that people can't replicate it with AI or whatever the crap, right? And I think initially I'd been the type of person who had been like, oh, come on, it's AI. People are just going to have fun with it, whatever. But it feels like the notion is I can understand what he's talking about. Like, in movies, in media, whatever, you have your voice out there, which people know, and people to some extent, there's a degree of maybe trust or respect or that is invoked by using Morgan Freeman's voice. And a person can use that to hijack people's sense of interest or trust or whatever the crap and get their message across. So I would like to think that, like, after I'm dead and gone, if I ever build something, if I ever create a legacy, I think I would prefer to burn it to the ground before letting someone else use my good name. Again, if I create something like that, to use my legacy to get their point across. There was the recent thing with the whole Odyssey, where it was kind of like, however much people might have liked the movie itself, I think my sympathies will inevitably be with people who were fans of the original. Because I've had that type of thing happen to me, where like people take an old property and they could just make something new. They could give it a different name and say, oh, based on such and such. They don't. They take the original property because they need that. They need that in with people. They need people to trust them, to be interested. They need to use that to do something they want to do. And there seems something incredibly ghoulish and macabre about putting your words into the mouth of a dead man. Right? Like skinwalking a dead man and saying, oh no, this is what this legacy was. This is what this story was always about. This is what it was all about. And if you don't think that, if you have a problem with that, you're the problem. You're the back. It's just, shit you. It's like, come on, man. Can we just agree on principle that if you can't properly adapt a dead man's work, if you can't properly do justice to the story and to the people who are fans of the original story, to do justice to their memory of it and to the original work, don't do it. Again, give it a different title and say based off of whatever, right? If you want. I would say even that, like just make something new, but they can't and they won't because they need that shortcut to people's trust, affection, and interest. There's a reason they don't do that. There's a reason they say, oh no, we're doing the Odyssey. We're not doing something based off the Odyssey. We're doing the Odyssey. Pieces. Anyways.
People think of like the apex example is James Bond. But let's say Bond comes home after another escapade in Russia where he's killed the guy in the casino and he's swooned all the girls and he's done everything and he's driving the Aston Martin back. And he gets home and he opens up his laptop and gets a Microsoft Word file. And he's been putting off that romance novel for 10 years. And he's afraid to publish it because what people will think because he's James Bond. In that case, well, is he high agency? Because in some regards, yes. But if he's ultimately outsourcing his sense of self to other people, he's also low agency. So it's such a nuanced one to run through.
It's interesting you say that. The second you think,
Well, again, I would think of a person who is actually high agency, a person who is a leader or something like that, a person who is brave and bold. Like, okay, yes, they might feel that initial reluctance, but a person who is truly high agency versus a person who's low agency will be capable of overcoming that, right? Like, I don't think anyone's a natural at everything, but I feel like, yeah, you should be able to learn. You should be able to try. I don't know. I think
about that, I think about other domains in my life.
I think there is a universality to the notion or the utility of bravery. Like, you're not brave in every regard, but you can learn to become brave in whatever you're trying to do.
Where I've been two different people at the same time. Where I remember reading Mindset by Carol Dweck about, you know,
I thought he was about to say Mein Kampf. Sorry.
the ability to have a growth and a fixed mind.
My extrapolation device in my brain was working overtime there.
And it was crazy how in business, if there was any kind of shortcoming or trip up or issue, if my Instagram got deleted tomorrow, I'd be like, right, let's create a new one. Let's go. We're going to build it up. We're going to turn this into a positive. However, if I looked into my personal relationships in my life for the first 33 years, anytime something went wrong, it's their fault, they're mental, nothing wrong with me. All these girls are crazy. I'm getting out of here. So I had a very fixed, or like, let's just say my mindset towards business was in a good place, but I had the complete polar opposite ability when it came to personal relationships. Oh, well, mate, this could be a discussion for a therapist or, you know, someone else. Probably deep-rooted psychological issues, or, you know, I would even sometimes, you know, if it was getting real heated, I'd pull the adoption card out. I'd be like, there's something here.
Yeah.
You know, oh, you know, maybe it's to do with the facts, you know.
Well, see, that's the thing. I like to think, however many excuses you might have for failure, like, you should never try to excuse mediocrity in yourself. Like, you can say, yes, this happened, which caused me to be such and such. And insofar as maybe you're trying to understand why you are where you are, yeah, sure, fine. But as a way of, like, it feels like it's very easy to slip from, okay, this is why it's understandable, but it's still not okay. I guess maybe that's what I say. Like, it's okay to maybe not be super pissed at yourself. Like, it's not inexplicable why you are where you are, but to still be willing to push yourself, I guess.
Parents gave me up as a child. I don't know. I'm playing on that. But then it made me realize, okay, you can be two things at the same time, which is such a great point about agency. Now, another thing I've always kind of been curious about when looking at the environment around me is the tendency to make a decision whether or not you want to surround yourself with high agency people or quote unquote low agency people. Because I think we can sometimes misunderstand the impact of our social circles on us. It sounds, this is a really weird analogy to kind of use, but I had some Welsh friends growing up at uni, and if I spent too much time with them, I started picking up the twang within a few weeks. So if I can pick up a Welsh/West Country accent just from spending time with friends, what kind of impact can someone's mindset, vision, energy, what time they wake up, what they're doing? You've just moved in with Chris Williamson, which I can't help but think is obviously friendship, but also strategic. And actually, I think that if I was brutally honest with you, almost every one of my best friends is a strategic relationship as much as it is a genuine relationship. So
I guess I don't know if I would say exactly that, but I do think the people you probably spend the most time with should be something that's probably pretty intentional. I think you can be friends with a lot of people, and I think you can hang out with a lot of people, but, like, yeah, you probably want to choose who you spend a lot of time with. Because I think the people you spend the most time with are the people who you will become the most like. I just reiterating what I said. That's stupid, but I'm right, and it was my idea first.
Agency frequency in which we emit, we are picking people of a similar vibration, let's say, so that we are not facing any undue restrictions into getting to where we want. Would you say that's accurate?
I think loosely so. Yeah, I think I had this. idea handle from a long time ago, which was treadmill friends and sofa friends. Because again, I was trying to describe a phenomenon
That's a nice way of saying it.
that I was experiencing, which is there's certain friends of mine that I'd hang around, and again, particularly leans towards more of a British thing, which I don't want to harp on the UK thing, but where after hanging out, you kind of want to lay on a sofa to recover. Whereas there's other friends that after I hang out, I have so much excess energy.
Okay, I was kind of maybe misunderstanding what I was thinking. I was thinking like they're the people who push him to be better per se. I don't know. Maybe, I think I was kind of not getting what he was saying.
That I need to go on a treadmill
I get it now.
just to burn it off to go to sleep that night. So like treadmill friends and sofa friends. I read a great tweet the other day of, I think from Jeremy Giffon, and he was saying like the best conversations or the best friendships are ones that are both produce like you feel energy afterwards, but also generative in terms of ideas. But for me, I think the problem, and I can already see the YouTube comments now, James, that the problem that people will maybe think is you should just hang around with the most successful person and therefore you will be more successful. And again, like everything in life, it's not as black and white as that. Like there's definitely utility of hanging around people who are further on in their careers and you learn from them. But I would also rather be around people that I kind of call in a live mode, that, you know what, they figured out what they want to do and they just want to play the saxophone 5 nights a week. I find that person in a way almost has more agency, that I want to hang around more than the miserable CEO that can't leave because he's afraid of what people think. So it's not just a pure,
like
you know what I mean? Because if you do that, like it's a pyramid that basically the only person like everybody's trying to hang out with is Elon Musk. You know what I mean? You just kind of work all the way up the stack. And then by definition, he can't hang out with anybody because everybody's below him. There's a great tweet recently where somebody was talking about essentially be careful. There's always going to be somebody more richer than you on social media, and it's going to make you feel bad about yourself. And like Elon has his good tweets and his bad tweets, but that was a great one where he basically replied with like, "Oh, what about me?" Like it's like the only guy where actually going on social media, nobody's richer than him, which I thought was quite funny.
It's interesting what you say there, because I completely agree with that sentiment where sometimes...
Now, to be fair, I'm going to guess like autocrats or whatever of minor countries. Well, I say probably major countries. Elon's a trillionaire, right? So I'm going to guess like pure money-wise, net worth, yes, technically speaking, but there are people who would probably have control over assets that are worth a lot more than what he's got going on.
Exactly what you say. It's good to hang out with friends who aren't obsessed about the same things as me, because suddenly we can just sit around and talk shit. And I think that that's one of the things that I've certainly missed in the last few years of my life, where the idea of sitting around with friends and sinking 10 beers, writing off the next day and just talking about absolute rubbish 10 years ago was the idea of a perfect dream. I could not have thought of a better Saturday afternoon. But now I'm thinking to myself, oh, well, you know, I'm kind of behind on an email marketing automation that I wanted to put out last week. So even my values have changed. But one of my neighbors goes surfing quite a lot. And when I look at surfing, which I'm not very good at, first of all, it's kind of a weird thing. If we were to look down on the floor and see ants next to a hose that was left on, and they're just going around in circles and jumping on a stream of water and going down and coming back, you go, these little ants are such idiots. But then you look out to the water, go, it's human ants that will go out and sit and wait for 5 minutes for a slight vibration in the water to come to create a certain wave, and then they'll just move along it and become
That's kind of strange.
obsessed with it. But there's that element of kind of stillness and that element of going out, being away from my phone. As far as being productive, I think I have to say to myself,
Well, do you know the thing of like recreation has to have some functionality as well as just enjoyment, I tend to think. Like it's not just like, oh, this is like the equivalent of a Mars bar. I don't know if I've ever had a Mars bar. The equivalent of like a Twix candy bar. Like I think there's something more substantial there when it comes to recreation. Entertainment, maybe a little bit, but recreation in particular, I would tend to think there has to be some sort of, especially if you're doing it with other people, I think that can have an element as well.
This is going to be great for my thoracic extension and my overhead reach and my lat development. I almost have to get myself into the mode to think this is a productive thing to do. So I think you're absolutely right there with that balance between you need to be able to move alongside some of the people that are in the same circles as you, but sometimes you need a headwind to go up against to snap you out of it so you don't become insane, which could be one of the reasons why some of Elon's tweets are so hit and miss. Now, you mentioned the UK. I don't want to get into a
He hates Elon. I agree. Like, I feel like Elon is probably very smart in some regards, but I think in some other regards he's almost simplistic, childlike, if you will.
slagging off contest about it. First of all, before we go into this, how is life in America away from the UK? Or shall I say, how is life
USA
in Texas? Because Texas can be seen very differently
Is Chris Williamson in America now?
to America.
You answered I think the way you asked that question at the end is how I kind of try and describe it to people when they ask me the question of how's America. It's almost like an alien saying how's Earth. Like, it's so fucking big. Like, what do you, particularly coming from the UK, the immediate thing is people talk about, oh, it's only a 7-hour drive. Like, I don't know anybody growing up really that did a 7-hour. Like, to do a 7-hour drive in the UK, like, that is so different. Whereas here, that's just part of Texas. So I could kind of answer the question of like, how's Austin? And I've then traveled around to different cities or different states within the US. But each part is so individualistic. So there's that nuance out the gate. But I would say like the immediate stuff that like probably the first thing I kind of realized on the ground is I've now got like a good mix of British friends and a good mix of American friends. And I find there's this weird part in the Venn diagram between the two. So the one thing I noticed in the UK,
That's definitely him, I think.
common social vice is cynicism. So it's the cliche thing of, he got this because he knows this person, or he didn't deserve it, or she, like...
See, that's like, I hate that approach to people who are better than you or in a better position than you. Like, even if it's somewhat true, like, if your knee-jerk response to someone being better than you is, they probably cheated. They probably didn't deserve it. Like, rather than, wow, I wonder how they get that. Or I wonder how they got that, and I wonder how I can get that. I wonder how I can get to the point where they are. I think I've said this before, but it feels like there is no person with a situation so good in life that they can't screw it up, and there's no person with a situation so bad in life that they can't make it materially better. So this notion of your knee-jerk response is, well, they probably didn't deserve it. They probably got it by some underhanded methods. There's no way I can do that unless I cheat. Like it's very blackpilling. Anyways, you guys can go check out the rest of this if you like. A Problem with Agency, George Mack, 4K, The James Smith Show. All right.